And first we're going to hear from Tim Shank. Tim is a deep sea biologist. He's an associate scientist in the biology department and the former director of the Ocean Exploration Institute at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. And he's known for his research on the ecology and evolution of deep sea creatures, including at hydrothermal vents and seamounts, canyons, and in deep trenches, deep ocean trenches. He combines genetic approaches and ecological field studies to understand the conditions and the adaptations that allow various species to migrate, to evolve, and to thrive in deep sea habitats. And he's internationally recognized for his research on ocean floor community structure and the evolution of diverse deep sea species groups, many of which were previously undiscovered. He's pioneered the use of telepresence technology, making ocean exploration and research more accessible to the public, which of course we think is a wonderful thing, and has conducted more than 60 scientific expeditions to the Arctic, Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. He's also made more than 50 dives in Buoy's human-operated submersible Alvin, and more than 500 dives with the AUV and ROVs, including the first use of the hybrid ROV NEREID in the ocean's deepest trenches. And he's the author and co-author of more than 100 scientific papers, recently the award-winning best-selling book, Discovering the Deep. He served on numerous scientific panels and national and international committees, leading to research conservation management guidelines for deep sea ecosystems, oil spill response efforts, international initiatives, and setting international priorities for deep ocean exploration and research. Now you know all about Tim, but he's going to tell us in person a bit more about what his research and what kinds of explorations he's been up to and what it's all about. And Tim, take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine. And I'm so grateful to you and to all of you for the opportunity to be here and have this experience. I'm so grateful. And I'm gonna, can I show my screen? I don't know if I'm, sorry. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Yeah, it's a thrill. I'm so excited to be here. I know it's a really short, intense presentation. I know she said it's like 7 minutes or so, but I want to share some most recent results and some of the driving things that I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've really have tried to explore a lot of the deep ocean, ask questions about how life has evolved. And I want to really start with the discovery of hydrothermal vent systems, which took place in 1977. This is a deep sea picture here on the left. You see this black smoke-like stuff coming out of the seafloor, 750 degrees Fahrenheit, laden with poisonous gases, toxic elements, and heavy metals that would normally kill us in a few seconds. But the life as you see it here on the right, these giant tube worms thrive. More than 800 species now around the world that live at these vent systems, and they forever change the way we think life can exist on Earth. It can live in total darkness, near freezing cold, and on chemicals that come out of rock, not from photosynthesis. And so I've been studying these areas for 20 years or so, and I am looking for the next place that's going to fundamentally alter the way we think about how life can exist. And that is in the Hadal Zone. That's the area that's 4 to 7 miles down, or 6,000 meters to 11,000 meters. It's the deep ocean trenches. It's in light blue on this map. There's places that are, there's places here are the trenches along here. There's also parts in the deep Pacific here that are also blue, but it's all, it amounts to about 50% of the depth of our ocean. And currently, I mean, the point I want to get across is that we cannot explore these areas with any kind of systematic way. We can't conduct research. We don't have the vehicles to do this. There's a really strong desire to learn more from opportunistic samples, that we want to get to these places The pressure is like 15,000 pounds per square inch. And it's, you know, liken it to a Boeing 747 on a dime or on your toe or something. It's hard to fathom how the pressure is. The pressure is so great, it could squeeze water out of an individual cell in an animal without adaptations from down there. So there's a high capacity we're learning now of natural products, antibiotics. And so there's all kinds of scientific reasons to go down there. Very few people have a vision of what it actually looks like in their head to be in the hadal zone. This is a topographic map showing you a trench off of New Zealand. It's called the Kermadec Trench. It's the purple bit here. And you see it's rugose, it's folded. And what's happening here is the abyssal plate on the left, with those mountains there, is subducting or going down to the right and pushing that plate up. That's why there's a big wall over here. And that wall ends up forming into volcanoes. I'm going to put this animation into here. And you can see there's a line of seamounts here, but that area in the purple is 7 miles down. It's about 800 miles long. These seamounts you see in the foreground are all going to go and be subducted in millions of years. And there's all these volcanic ridges that are made on the other side, the other plates getting pushed up. And what's happening here is as that one plate goes underneath another one, it squeezes water out of the rock. It's tremendous amount of pressure. It heats it up and forms volcanoes. At the same time, I believe that those fluids that are coming out of the rock that are warmed are going to come out of the seafloor other places, and they're going to form hydrothermal vents, or they're going to form places where chemicals come out of the seafloor, and we're going to have novel life forms like giant tube worms that are 10 feet long at vents now that we know. Going to be a whole other set of those kinds of species, a whole other set of adaptations. I could talk for a long time about these, but here's just an example right here. You see there's two species from the hadal zone that are here. It's a supergiant amphipod in the top left. You see the scale there of 1 inch. Normally that animal is the size of a flea. No matter where you go, whether it's off of Cape Cod here or California, size of a flea. In the deep ocean, size of a flea. But in the trenches, it's massive. Here's one of them right here. It's ridiculous. They have these novel compounds in their body, just like the deepest living fish does, to be able to live that deep. So there's the deepest living fish. It's got a massive liver. It's got a gel. We don't know why. It's got a gel that goes down its spine. We don't know why. But we do know that both of these species have biomolecules in them that actually go inside the cell, and they surround water molecules. And when they're doing so, it makes the cell unable to crush. It equals the ambient pressure outside of the cell. So the proteins inside the cell, the DNA, all the organelles and things can function. Without these biomolecules and this adaptation, these animals couldn't live there. And we now know that, well, we have a theory that the deeper you go, we see this, deeper you go, the more that biomolecule you have in the cell. There comes a point at the time which the cell can no longer hold any more of that biomolecule, just physically can't. And that we've determined should be the depth limit of all fish, for example. And when we look, and we predicted that would be at 8,200 meters. We've focused our studies at 8,000, 8,100, 82, bracketing 8,200 meters. And certain enough, there are no fish in our ocean below 8,200 meters. We're identifying the limits of life on Earth based on the adaptations these animals have. It's an absolute thrill. I could talk forever about this stuff. But here we go. Here's 8,000 meters. You know, this is about the level which fish can live. You're looking downward in the Kermadec Trench off New Zealand, seeing amphipod crustaceans here on the rocks, the white things. You're seeing anemones, different kinds of anemones, different species, different kinds of habitats are here. This is our brittle stars on sediment. If I took a cup of sediment from that picture, there'd be over 100 or 200 species. Here's a rocky habitat here that has sea cucumbers, stalked anemones, 2 feet long. The anemones go all the way down the tubes. Don't see it anywhere else on our planet. Just in the 4 dives we had with the NEREID vehicle that we talked about before we started this presentation, we lost that vehicle shortly after that dive. And before that, we had 4 dives, and we discovered more than 200 new species, new biomolecules. It's ridiculous what we were able to learn in that short amount of effort. Here's the NEREID system. I just put the slide in because we just talked about it before this started. But you see the vehicle here is in the front here. That's the remotely operated vehicle. It's tethered to this tether management system. It's a huge torpedo-like thing, cumbersome. NEREID had to have its own crane to lower it into the water. And there's a massive winch here on the deck of the ship that's got to lower down this, tether management system here. Cumbersome, huge, hard to deal with. And we lost it. We lost this vehicle. It imploded at 10,000 meters in the Kermadec Trench on May 8th, 2014. So what do we do now? We have no vehicle to go down and make these great discoveries and learn all these new things. Here, I want to show you the state of the art of how we do our work in the Hadal Zone right now. What we do is we build a tripod out of steel. We put a camera and a battery on it and lights. It can be a video camera or a still camera. And we put baited traps out in front of the tripod. And this is what you're seeing here. You're seeing the deck of a ship, that's wood. And you're seeing this metal bar that goes through a big bait ball of mackerel. This is a bag on the deck of the ship for the blood doesn't hit the wood. But anyway, I'm going to show you a video here that's going to lower. We're going to free fall this thing. We kick the tripod over the side of the ship. It falls on its own, lands, and takes pictures every 3 minutes or so. And this is going to be in the Peru-Chile Trench. It's about 8,400 meters depth, so it's beyond the limit of what we think fish can live, and you'll see no fish. But here we go. I'm going to drop it over the side. It's going through the water column. Takes about an hour or two to get down there, and then all of a sudden, within minutes, there's massive swarms of these large amphipod crustaceans. They're shrimp-like. There's shrimp in the picture. There are animals that are coming out of the sediment here to eat that bait. There are sea cucumbers on the left there, wandering in. It's over the course of about 4 hours, that big ball of mackerel is reduced to nothing but a skeleton. That's not supposed to be the way it is. At these great depths in our ocean, there's not supposed to be much organic matter. When fish die at the surface of our ocean, they sink and they get degraded by things that eat them, microbes, other things. By the time you get to 5,000 meters, halfway down, we calculate there's 0.01% of the organic material that was at the surface. And that's halfway down. So when you get to the bottom, there should be no organic material, not much living there at all. What we're finding is the opposite. For some reason, these trenches are shuttling in massive amounts of carbon, and we don't know why that is. Whether it's currents bringing in, whether it's sediment slumps coming down down the walls. Regardless, these animals love it, and there's extreme biodiversity in these places. And they're extremely active microbially. So that's the state of the art of how we actually get data now. And that's not satisfactory to us. All we're seeing is the animals that come to the bait. That's, fish or those amphipods. We want to be able to traverse across the seafloor, explore, and discover. And so we developed, over the last couple of years, a new class of autonomous underwater vehicles. We built 2 of these. They're called Orpheus, the Orpheus class. You see here, it's opposed to 3.2 tons. This is actually about 500 pounds. It's about 6 feet long. It's got, here's a picture of it on deck. It's got 2 vertical thrusters, 2 horizontal thrusters, lights, 4 lights. It's got a high definition camera that I put in this bay right here. But it basically has syntactic foam, a flotation on the top here. It's from James Cameron's, his submarine actually that we now own here at Hui. And then it has a 17-inch glass sphere where all the electronics go. They can't get wet. The batteries, a camera's in there, all the electronics. And so easy to handle, lightweight. And instead of costing $14 million like NEREID did, it actually cost less than $200,000 to build. So we can build many of these. And here it is being deployed last year on the Neil Armstrong, a local ship at Hui, going in the water. You can see the 4 lights are on. You see that glass sphere here at the one end with all the business in it. And so the goal here, our vision, it's working quite well right now, but here's the vision in an animation. So it's going to land on the bottom. It's going to traverse the bottom at about 3 meters altitude, or 9-10 feet, and take images. It's going to take overlapping images. It's going to stitch them together and make a 3D reconstruction, a mosaic of the seafloor, an image mosaic. Multiple vehicles are going to be diving at the same time. Here it is taking imagery. It sees an area of interest. Maybe it's a hydrothermal vent, and it signals to another vehicle. I just went over a vent. I'm going to keep mapping the seafloor, but you go investigate this vent, if you will. We have the option of actually putting a tether. You see a tether on the back of the vehicle. We can do that too if we want to operate it from interacting with it live from the surface or from the ship. Here it's going to sit on the bottom. Autonomous underwater vehicles in the deep sea, they don't want to land on the bottom. They don't want to come in contact with the bottom because it may get entangled or broken or whatever. We built this purposefully to land on the bottom so it can take samples characterize things in situ, and go to work. They're just taking samples in our vision and for sample return to scientists on board the ship. We're also going to have base station landers. You see a couple on the left. There's one on the left and one on the far right, I think. Going to communicate those base landers. They're going to have other vehicles on them that are also going to go out and map and do sampling. And right now we're planning to build 10 of these and have them operating at different depths in different trenches. All this is made possible by a collaboration we have with the Jet Propulsion Lab at NASA. Here you see the two engineers, one from JPL and one from Woods Hole on the right, putting together the brains of Orpheus. This is a 17-inch glass sphere with the batteries, electronics, and all that, the speed controllers and all that kind of stuff. And this has been an amazing, this would not have happened without them. Our ability to miniaturize all this, the components of the vehicle with JPL has been astounding. And the propulsion lab is really focused on the software. And I can talk about that if you want to. It's amazing software that's currently on the helicopter on Mars. A version of it is. We have the same engineer that's been working on the helicopter on Mars, and I think those are the only two vehicles that have this kind of. No, we're the only deep ocean vehicles that has that kind of software. So anyway, and part of the goal for us and for NASA is to explore ocean worlds, other ocean worlds. We have 6 in our solar system. They're all ice covered. You know, and Curt's probably going to talk a lot about this. He's had a lead in the Europa missions to go there. But there's a synergy here with us and with NASA in that we want to discover life in the ocean. We want to be able to characterize it remotely, autonomously. We want to discover life or its components, whether that's where is life in the deepest parts of our ocean, what kinds of life forms are there, whether it's amino acids or DNA or even viruses. We don't really know what lives in our deepest regions of our ocean. It's similar with being on Europa. And so we have a group here at WHOI that is focused on studying ocean worlds from the oceanographic perspective. And so here's a sort of a diagram of the vision of, here you are as a cutaway on Europa and moon of Jupiter. And you've got the lander, which I think Curt can talk a lot about, going, you know, having drilled somehow through 10 or 12 kilometers of ice, tethered to some sort of a vehicle down here on the bottom that's looking for hydrothermal vents. And I think why this is so compelling for us is that the moon Europa, which is much smaller than Earth, you know, may have an ocean that is 100 miles or 100 miles. I'm sorry, 60 miles or 100 kilometers, I think it is, deep. So by the time you get into this ocean, it's going to be under the pressure of the Hadal Zone and on Earth. And so Earth becomes an analogous place, a test bed for NASA to work. And what's neat about Europa is that it has a solid core. They know about it. It's a rocky core. It's got a salty ocean. That core is flexing, I think, I want to say flexing from tidal forces on it. And with that flex over time, it's going to fracture that crust. And through those fractures, water is going to traverse through those fractures, get superheated by the heat source from all that tidal pulling and pushing. And that's all you need for hydrothermal vents: salt water, heat source, and rocks with which to take nutrients out of. So there's very little doubt in my mind that there'll be life there, again, what I know about the deep ocean or oceans in general. And so we have a shared passion and goal to discover and characterize remote life. And so I'm going to stop with that. It might be a nice lead in to Curt and what he's going to be doing. But I can't wait to answer your questions and talk to you more about it.
Great, thank you, Tim. That was fascinating. I want to go. I don't know where I'm going, but really super exciting. And I think we will go ahead and hear from Curt, and then we'll have some questions later because clearly these two worlds are joined, which I just think, talk about convergence, fascinating. So I would like to introduce our second speaker, who is Curt Niebur, and Curt works in the Planetary Science Division in the Science Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters. And as a program scientist, he works on robotic space science missions at all stages, from formulation through operations. As a discipline scientist, he manages a variety of research and analysis programs. He's also very interested in workforce development and the issues facing early career scientists and engineers. And I hope we can talk more about that a little later. And among his many specialties are listed planetary science, mission formulation development, proposal development, program management, strategic planning, scientific research, and early career outreach and policy, which is great. So Curt, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you can tell us.
Thanks, and thank you all for not just the invitation tonight, but for sharing your time with Tim and I tonight, because we of course love to talk about what we do. It's exciting, it's fun, it's always nice when other people want to hear about it as well. So I've got a few slides to show, really just to sort of get people thinking a little bit for the task you're going to face tonight. So let's see, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so as was mentioned, I work at NASA headquarters in the Planetary Science Division. We do robotic exploration of the solar system. So there's a lot of parallels to what you just heard about. Anything from Mercury to Pluto and beyond is what we do. So when you hear about rovers and helicopters on Mars, that's us. When you might recall the flyby of Pluto a few years ago, that was us. In a few weeks, you're going to hear about the launch of the Lucy mission to the Trojan asteroids. That's a big one we have coming up. The nuclear powered octocopter drone that we're working on to launch to Titan in 2027 should be another exciting one. So that's the kind of work we do. But it's important for me to stress, we don't do people. That's not what I do. So if you have questions about how astronauts go to the bathroom in space, I'm not your guy. It has something to do with tubes. That's the extent of my knowledge. I don't really want to know more than that. But if you have questions about how we use spacecraft and robots to explore space, that is something that I can definitely talk about at length. And it's fun to talk about it to groups like this because your whole theme is convergence, for bringing together people from different areas to ponder a problem. And that's exactly what we have to do on our missions. It takes an incredibly diverse and talented team of people to pull these missions off. And unfortunately, those teams are usually invisible to the general public. You see the results, you see the pictures, but the different people, the different perspectives, expertise, talents, it's one of the most rewarding things to get a chance to work on, to be a part of a team like that. So let's talk a little bit about oceans. I think you just heard at length, Tim did a great job of sort of centering you on the fact that Earth is an ocean world. This is a picture of Earth that was taken on Monday by the EPIC satellite. And it's pretty obvious. There's a lot of ocean there. Earth is mostly ocean. But then the question becomes, is it the only ocean world? Because water is actually really common in our solar system, incredibly common. But what's rare is liquid water. And that's because liquid water needs just the right kind of conditions to exist. And we'll circle back to that in a minute. It's great that Earth has oceans because in addition to being an incredibly critical part of the origin and existence and continuation of life, they're also just a lot of fun. And what I like about ocean world exploration beyond Earth, which I really have to stress, is a very, very new concept. If you had talked about oceans beyond Earth, oceanography beyond Earth 15 years ago, you would have been laughed at. But what's great about it, though, is it's relatable to everybody. I'm a planetary scientist. I get that when we have press conferences, when NASA has press conferences and we talk about, oh, we discovered a new kind of crater on Mercury or this weird chemical compound on Mars. That's fascinating to us, but it's not always relatable to people. But oceans, everybody gets that. It's not a concept that, you really have to explain to people before they can say, wow, okay, that is interesting. I get it. So I think this is a really exciting period in planetary exploration because it's one of the few times where people can ride along to an even greater extent than they have in the past. So as I mentioned, the question is, Earth the only ocean world? And as was mentioned, the answer is no. I mean, spoiler alert, everybody. Mars and Venus, our closest neighbors, had oceans, but they lost them billions and billions of years ago. Today, they are dry, drier than the driest deserts on Earth. They are not hospitable places today. They're not places that you are going to want to vacation at today. And then the question becomes, why? And it's sort of what I alluded to before, that Goldilocks principle. I think everybody's probably familiar with Goldilocks. And it really comes down to some places are too hot, some places are too cold, some places are just right. And on Earth, it's just right. We've got just the right temperature. We've got just the right pressure. So water can exist in its liquid form. And as I said, that's the really rare thing in our solar system, liquid water. You can go almost anywhere and get water in the form of ice. But the big unknown in planetary exploration has always been, where can we find liquid water beyond Earth? We can't on Venus. It's too close to the sun. It's too hot. We can't on Mars today because it's too far from the sun and it's too cold. And it only gets worse the further out you go, because this Goldilocks concept was always, well, if you need a certain temperature, the distance from the sun controls the temperature. So there's no point in even thinking about an ocean at Jupiter or Saturn or Uranus or Neptune, because they're minus 160 degrees and dropping. It would be foolish to even think about looking for liquid water, to look for an ocean at Jupiter or beyond. That was the thinking for about 100, 150 years, until around the turn of the century in the year 2000, when we sent the Galileo probe to Jupiter. Or actually, more importantly, that's when Margaret Kibbleston started looking into this. So Galileo got to Jupiter in about 1996. This is Margaret Kibbleston right here. This is Europa. This is one of the larger moons of Jupiter. As Tim mentioned, it's about the size of Earth's moon, but its surface temperature is minus 240 degrees Fahrenheit. So although it's the size of the moon, what you're really looking at here is a moon-sized frozen sphere of ice, of water. This is one big sphere of water ice. And those lines you see, those brownish lines you see on the surface, are cracks in the ice. Europa the surface is almost pure water ice. And then what you see here is the Galileo spacecraft. This is what we sent out to Jupiter and its moons to take a look at what was going on. And this is what Margie saw when Galileo flew past Europa. And I think it's obvious to everybody who's here tonight the significance of these plots, right? Of course it's not. What Margie saw when she looked at these plots, and I should say, Margie's not an oceanographer. Margie is a plasma physicist. She looks at space plasmas and she looks at magnetospheres and magnetic fields. And when her instrument, which was designed to detect magnetic fields, went by Europa, this is what it sent back. And Margie, who again is not an oceanographer, looked at this and said, hey, everybody, guess what? Europa has an ocean. And the response from everybody was, that's kind of hard to believe, Margie, because, it's pretty darn cold out there. But I think you can tell by looking at Margie that she is not the kind of person you take lightly when she makes a statement. nor does she make that statement lightly. And what she came back with was, here's the math. I can see the effect of Europa's ocean on the magnetic field of Jupiter. And that's what you're seeing in those plots. So people went back to their desks, got out their pencils, and started trying to figure out the physics of this. And this is what they came up with. That Europa, while it's in an incredibly cold part of the solar system, is not frozen solid. Sure, the surface is minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit, but what they figured out when they ran the numbers and looked at it in a new way, thanks to Margie, was that as you go deeper, it gets warmer. And in fact, it gets warm enough that that ice melts, becomes liquid water. The temperature and the pressure get to the point where liquid water can exist. And once you get a kilometer, 4 kilometers, maybe 30 kilometers below that ice crust surface, you've got a liquid water ocean. And it's not a small ocean, everybody. It's a global ocean. This ocean covers the entirety of Europa, and it's deep. And in fact, it's larger than all of Earth's oceans combined by a factor of 2. So Earth is not the ocean world in our solar system. It's actually in second place. The ocean world in our solar system is out orbiting Jupiter, way out by Jupiter. And this has attracted a lot of attention from the science community and from NASA. And since Margie discovered this around 1999, 2000, it's been a priority for NASA to get another mission out there to try to figure out what's going on. And importantly, to try to figure out, is that ocean habitable? Because you can have a big ocean and it can be pure liquid water, and it can have no fish in it. In fact, perhaps that's the most likely outcome, because life is perhaps rare beyond Earth. Or perhaps that's not the case. Perhaps the largest ocean in our solar system that has been around for billions of years, longer than water on Earth, perhaps that environment that has been around for billions of years has spawned a second genesis of life, a second origin of life in our one single solar system. And that is why this is important. You already heard Tim talk about how shocking it was when we found life at the bottom of Earth's oceans. That could be exactly the conditions that we would see on Europa. But this is a completely distinct and separate ecosystem, if it exists. We always talk about how life might be rare in the universe. Think what it would mean, though, if life arose twice just in our one solar system. Extrapolate that to the millions and millions and millions of solar systems just in our galaxy. Finding a second data point on that curve that exists in our solar system would be a huge paradigm shift in our search for life beyond Earth and beyond our solar system. That's why Europa is such a tempting and tantalizing target. And also, I should stress, we're not talking about finding fossils that maybe there was life there 2 billion years ago. We're talking about a habitable environment right now, today. A habitable environment that might be inhabited today, right now, by living things that we could study. Instead of just looking in rocks for fossils of things that died hundreds of millions of years ago. It's a tremendous opportunity. And the next step in that opportunity is the Europa Clipper mission, which will launch in 2024. And we'll start answering those questions of, does Europa have the right ingredients that it could be habitable, that it could support life? And if the answer from that comes back as yes, then the step after that is the type of exploration that you saw in the previous presentation, where we try to get through that ice shell and we try to explore and interact with the ocean directly. And that's going to be immensely challenging. We don't know how thick that ice shell is. Europa Clipper will give us a definitive answer. But at a minimum, you're talking about a mile or two of solid ice. And when I say ice, I'm not talking about ice cubes like you get out of your freezer. At the conditions that Europa's at, like at its surface, water ice is like granite. It's like rock. Now, fortunately, once you get a few hundred meters, maybe half a mile down, it warms up enough that you're talking more about like ice from your freezer, and that's easier to get through. But getting through that ice shell, even if it's only a mile thick, it's going to be really tough. And if Europa Clipper tells us that ice shell is 20 miles thick, that's an even tougher job. But what's waiting for us underneath is going to be worth that effort. So that's everything I have to share for you this